On January 28, 2025, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent proposed implementing universal tariffs on U.S. imports, starting at 2.5% and increasing by the same amount each month, potentially reaching up to 20%. This strategy aims to give businesses and countries time to adjust and negotiate improved trade terms. However, President Donald Trump has expressed a preference for more substantial tariffs. He announced plans to impose higher tariffs on imported computer chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals, criticizing current subsidies and suggesting that increased tariffs would discourage imports and boost domestic production. Since taking office on January 20, 2025, President Trump has swiftly enacted a range of tariffs targeting major U.S. trading partners, particularly Canada, Mexico, and China. These actions are part of his administration's comprehensive plan to address issues such as illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and trade imbalances. On Inauguration Day, President Trump announced a 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico. The administration defended this move as essential to combat illegal immigration and the influx of drugs, particularly fentanyl, into the U.S. These tariffs are scheduled to take effect on February 1, 2025. Canada has strongly opposed these tariffs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stated that such measures would harm the Canadian economy and negatively impact American consumers and businesses. He emphasized the importance of maintaining a strong economic partnership between the two countries and indicated that Canada might consider retaliatory measures if necessary. Canada is also seeking broader international support, collaborating with partners such as the European Union, Denmark, Mexico, and others to formulate a collective response. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly announced plans to engage with counterparts in allied nations, including the UK, Mexico, and several EU member states, to develop a coordinated strategy against the potential U.S. tariffs. She stressed the importance of pragmatism in these discussions and noted ongoing conversations in European capitals regarding possible retaliatory actions. Chrystia Freeland, former finance minister and a leading candidate to succeed Prime Minister Trudeau, has proposed convening an international summit. This summit would include leaders from Mexico, Denmark, Panama, and the EU to coordinate a joint response to the U.S. administration's tariff policies and assertions of economic sovereignty. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has also denounced the tariffs, arguing that they will not effectively address immigration and drug trafficking issues. She highlighted the need for cooperative efforts between the U.S. and Mexico to tackle these complex challenges and warned that the tariffs could strain diplomatic relations. Beyond North America, President Trump has proposed an additional 10% tariff on all imports from China, citing China's role in the production and distribution of fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid contributing to the U.S. drug crisis. This tariff is also set to begin on February 1, 2025. China's government has responded by emphasizing the mutual benefits of U.S.-China trade relations and expressing a willingness to engage in constructive discussions to resolve trade disputes. Expanding his trade policy further, President Trump has warned the European Union that it may face tariffs if it does not increase its purchases of American oil and gas. He asserted that the EU needs to reduce its trade deficit with the US by significantly boosting energy imports, or else face tariffs on European goods. U.S. interest in Greenland and Denmark's response. Former President Donald Trump's economic policies extended beyond tariffs, including an expressed interest in purchasing Greenland. He did not rule out the use of military pressure to achieve this goal, prompting strong reactions from Denmark and European allies. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen reinforced Denmark's sovereignty over Greenland by engaging with European leaders to consolidate support against U.S. pressures. In meetings with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron, she emphasized the importance of European unity in countering external threats. Scholz underscored that borders should not be altered by force, indirectly addressing U.S. interests in Greenland. To strengthen its presence in the Arctic, Denmark committed approximately $2.1 billion to defense investments. This funding will be used for constructing 3 new Arctic naval vessels, acquiring surveillance drones, and enhancing satellite monitoring systems. Discussions have also taken place about stationing European troops in Greenland, though Denmark has yet to make a formal request. Meanwhile, Greenland's Prime Minister Mutbai Ajid reaffirmed the island's commitment to self-determination. He stated that while Greenland is open to increased cooperation with the United States, its people do not wish to become American citizens. The EU's economic challenges and strategic response. The European Union is facing mounting economic challenges due to multiple energy crises. Disruptions in Russian energy transit through Ukraine, Qatar's suspension of gas exports to Europe, and supply halts from Azerbaijan have created an increasingly unstable energy environment. These problems were further exacerbated by new U.S. sanctions on Russian oil and gas, which led to a surge in global energy prices. As a result, inflation and public dissatisfaction with the European Commission have risen across the continent. Adding to these economic strains, Trump has proposed additional tariffs on European products, further straining EU-US relations. In response, the EU has intensified efforts to reduce its reliance on U.S. trade and strengthen global partnerships. EU's strategic trade agreements. Recognizing the need for economic resilience, the EU has pursued new trade agreements to diversify its global partnerships. Notable among these efforts is the recently modernized EU-Mexico trade agreement, finalized on January 17, 2025. This agreement aims to reduce economic dependence on the U.S. and includes tariff removal, eliminates tariffs on various EU exports to Mexico, including agricultural products like cheese, poultry, pork, pasta, apples, jams, chocolate, and wine. Market access, improves EU businesses' access to Mexican government contracts, investments, and service sectors, such as financial services and telecommunications. Sustainability commitments, includes enforceable commitments on labor rights and environmental protections. Raw materials supply, enhances supply chain security for critical raw materials essential to various industries. Similarly, after 25 years of negotiations, the EU finalized a historic trade agreement with the Mercosur bloc, which includes Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. This agreement will create one of the world's largest free trade zones, covering over 700 million people and nearly 25% of global GDP. Key aspects include tariff reductions, eliminates tariffs on over 90% of traded goods, potentially saving EU exporters approximately €4 billion annually. Market access, grants EU industries, such as automobiles and chemicals, better access to South American markets, while South American agricultural exports, including beef and poultry, will gain increased EU entry under specific quotas. Sustainability measures, commits to upholding the Paris Climate Agreement and implementing anti-deforestation policies by 2030. Despite these advantages, the agreement faces resistance within the EU, particularly from farmers and environmental groups. French President Emmanuel Macron has expressed strong reservations, demanding additional safeguards. Ratification requires approval from all 27 EU member states and the European Parliament, which may slow the implementation process. Historical context, U.S.-EU relations. The economic and political relationship between the U.S. and Europe has deep historical roots. After World War II, the U.S. played a crucial role in rebuilding Europe through the 1948 Marshall Plan, providing financial aid to stabilize war-torn economies and encourage regional cooperation. The U.S. also supported the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951, viewing it as a means to prevent future conflicts between France and Germany. By 1954, the EU's predecessor had established a delegation in Washington, D.C., to manage growing economic ties. The relationship further deepened with the creation of the United States mission to the European communities in Brussels in 1961, reflecting a shared commitment to economic and political cooperation. Formation of security alliances after World War II. After World War II, the United States emerged as a global leader, playing a pivotal role in shaping the post-war international order. As tensions escalated with the Soviet Union, the U.S. took proactive measures to contain Soviet expansion and promote democratic values across the world. 1. Establishment of NATO, 1949. In response to the Soviet Union's growing influence, particularly in Eastern Europe and through actions like the Berlin Blockade, the United States spearheaded the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in 1949. NATO was a collective defense pact involving the US, Canada, and several Western European nations. This agreement committed each member to mutual defense in the event of an attack. The US played a crucial role in this alliance, providing both military support and financial backing, including stationing troops in Europe. General Dwight D. Eisenhower was appointed as NATO's first Supreme Commander. 2. The Truman Doctrine, 1947. In 1947, President Harry S. Truman introduced the Truman Doctrine, which marked a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy. The doctrine aimed to support countries resisting subjugation by armed minorities or external pressures, specifically targeting the spread of communism. The U.S. first applied this policy by providing military and economic aid to Greece and Turkey, aiming to prevent these nations from falling under Soviet control. The Truman Doctrine laid the foundation for the U.S. containment strategy throughout the Cold War. 3. The Marshall Plan, 1948. In addition to military strategies, the U.S. launched the Marshall Plan in 1948, a massive economic aid program designed to rebuild war-torn Europe. By revitalizing European economies, the U.S. sought to create conditions where democratic institutions could thrive, thus reducing the appeal of communism. The success of the Marshall Plan solidified Europe's alignment with U.S. policies during the early Cold War. 4. The Korean War and strengthening NATO. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, further solidified military cooperation between the U.S. and its NATO allies. The war underscored the threat of communist expansion, leading NATO to enhance its military coordination. NATO established the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, SHAPE, in 1951, appointing General Dwight D. Eisenhower as the first Supreme Allied Commander, transforming NATO into a comprehensive military alliance. 5. The Suez Crisis, 1956. However, the Suez Crisis of 1956 exposed tensions within the alliance. When Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, the United Kingdom, France, and Israel launched a military intervention to reclaim it. The U.S., under President Eisenhower, opposed this action, fearing it would destabilize the region and push Arab nations toward the Soviet sphere of influence. This event highlighted differing interests within NATO and signaled a growing independence in European foreign policies. 6. The Berlin Crisis and Cold War tensions, 1961. The Berlin Crisis of 1961 was another defining moment in the Cold War and NATO's role. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev demanded the withdrawal of Allied forces from West Berlin, threatening to sign a separate peace treaty with East Germany. In response, President John F. Kennedy reaffirmed U.S. commitment to West Berlin, strengthening NATO's collective defense principle. The crisis also highlighted NATO's importance in maintaining stability in Europe and fostering U.S. support for European integration, particularly through initiatives like the European Economic Community, EEC. 7. The Vietnam War and diverging European views. The Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, became a major point of contention between the U.S. and its European allies. While the U.S. escalated its military involvement, many European countries, particularly France, opposed it. France's opposition was rooted in its own colonial history in Indochina and a desire to distance itself from U.S. foreign policies. Other European nations, such as the United Kingdom and West Germany, showed varying degrees of support, but refrained from direct military involvement. 8. Economic tensions, the collapse of Bretton Woods and the European monetary system, 1979. Economic tensions also emerged in the 1970s, particularly after the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, which led to exchange rate volatility affecting European economies. In response, European leaders sought to reduce their reliance on the US dollar by creating the European Monetary System, EMS, in 1979. The EMS aimed to stabilize European currencies and foster closer monetary policy cooperation, marking a shift toward greater European economic autonomy. 9. U.S.-EU relations during the Reagan era. During the Reagan administration, the U.S. and Europe focused on economic liberalization and free market policies. Despite aligning on many issues, trade disputes, such as those over agricultural subsidies under the Common Agricultural Policy, CAP, highlighted ongoing economic differences. 10. Post-Cold War realignment. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 shifted global dynamics, prompting the U.S. and European Union, EU, to realign their relationship. This transition was formalized through key agreements that emphasized economic collaboration and peacekeeping efforts. The Transatlantic Declaration of 1990 established a framework for political dialogue between the U.S. and the EU, stressing shared values such as democracy and human rights. 11. The New Transatlantic Agenda, 1995. In 1995, the New Transatlantic Agenda, NTA, was launched, outlining 4 main objectives: promoting global peace and stability, addressing global challenges like terrorism and environmental degradation, expanding world trade and enhancing economic relations, building stronger cultural and educational exchanges. The NTA marked a shift from mere consultation to coordinated action between the US and the EU, further strengthening transatlantic ties. 12. Trade conflicts and economic interdependence. As the 21st century progressed, trade conflicts between the US and other countries, particularly the EU, China, Canada, and Mexico, began to have far-reaching consequences. The imposition of tariffs by the US triggered retaliatory actions that could disrupt global trade and increase inflation in the US economy. Countries affected by US tariffs, such as China, the EU, and Canada, could strengthen alliances and redirect trade flows, reducing US influence in global markets. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching this video.